With St. Patrick's Day in March, I've been reviewing a few Irish whiskies this month, and I recently managed to get my hands on the Bushmills Travel Exclusive 10-year-old aged in sherry and bourbon casks. So I thought I would compare it with a Bushmills whiskey that I've always got on my shelf, the 10-year-old single malt aged in bourbon and sherry casks. Are these meant to be different? Hey guys, I'm Nath Martyn, the Whisky Scribe. I'm a whiskey enthusiast and I love all things whiskey. Now, taste is subjective. There's a lot of whiskies out there and a lot of different ways to enjoy them. So whether you're a whiskey connoisseur or you're just looking to understand more about whiskey, let's explore it together. Now, if you'd like to see more from me, please consider subscribing. I put up new videos every week. You can also follow me over on Instagram. I'd also like to thank Dramwears for providing me with this pretty awesome shirt. They've got a selection of t-shirts that are all centered around whiskey. This one's the Hear no evil, see no evil, drink whiskey, which is a great life motto, really. But if you want to get one of these shirts, check out their website. It's well worth a look. I'll pop the link in the description below. Now, Bushmills is a distillery with a long history. They were established in 1608, which actually makes them the oldest still working distillery in the world. Not the oldest distillery in Ireland, the oldest distillery in the world. Now, as you probably know, I love whiskey stories and history, and as much as I'd love to go down the history path of Bushmills, I'm not going to, because with 400 years, that's a hell of a long path. The one thing I will cover though is a lot of Irish whiskey is grain-based. It'll be made with a combination of malted and unmalted barley or using other grains. This is because when the English imposed taxation on malted barley, the way a lot of Irish distillers got away with it was by switching away from malted barley and using less or none at all. Bushmills never faltered. They continued to make top quality single malt whiskey regardless of the taxation. Now, the Travel Exclusive edition states that it is a single malt Irish whiskey that has been aged for a minimum of 10 years in American oak and then finished in Oloroso sherry casks. Now, when a whiskey says it's been aged in American oak, you can pretty much guarantee that means bourbon cask. Unless it says virgin oak. Virgin simply means that nothing else has been aged in those barrels. They're brand new, and that's kind of a feature. So if you've aged something in virgin oak, you would state that. So when it just says American oak, we can pretty much assume that's bourbon casks. Now, if the makeup of this whiskey sounds familiar, that's because the 10-year-old single malt from the standard range, which is a fantastic whiskey that I absolutely love. It's a staple on my shelf. That's why I included it in my 5 affordable whiskies video. It also states that it is a 10-year-old single malt that has been aged in bourbon and sherry casks. It's slightly different words, but it has the same effect. They're both 10 years old, American oak, bourbon casks, Oloroso sherry, sherry casks. Now, if you look at the two side by side, you can see that the Travel Exclusive is darker. It's a lot darker, which would hint that it has had more exposure to sherry casks. The thing is, we do also know that Bushmills do sometimes add caramel colouring in order to just maintain the consistency of appearance. So that darker colour might be because of more exposure to sherry casks, but it could also be just making it look a little bit more exclusive for the Travel Exclusives. So the tasty notes on the bottle for this one state rich fruit and spice, which are really common tasty notes that you get for something that's spent a fair bit of time in sherry casks. Whereas the standard Bushmills 10-year-old states rich flavours of honey and vanilla, which are flavours that you're more likely to get from bourbon cask aging. Now, beyond that, everything from Bushmills is chill filtered, and both of these are 40% ABV, so there's no differences there. They both bear the same master distiller signature, which is Callum Egan. The only other possible difference is that the Travel Exclusive states that it was hand-selected by Bushmills master blender Helen Mulholland. Now, if that name sounds familiar, that's because Helen Mulholland was the first woman to be inducted in the Whiskey Hall of Fame. Now, she left Bushmills in June of 2022, and I picked this one up in November of 2022. Takes a little bit of time for a good whiskey to get to Australia, so you could probably assume that this one was also blended by Helen. So all that's left for me to do now is to try these. So you can already tell, if you look at them side by side, they're very different colours. But I think I'm going to start with the one I already know and just revisit that. So on the nose, it's got that light honey. You can smell the malt. There's that chocolate in the background as well that I love. And that honey, the vanilla, and that faint little bit of chocolate in the background, that carries across on the palate. And on the finish, you do have some of those dark fruits that you get from a little bit of exposure to sherry cask, but not a lot. I'd say the vanilla is a lot stronger here, so you're definitely getting more bourbon cask. It's still beautiful. But this is the one I've never tried before. So you can already see just that color. Unless they've added anything in there, that's definitely more exposure to sherry casks. On the nose, I'm kind of getting spiced berries, like lightly spiced berries. There is that sweetness that comes across from sherry casks, that fortified sweetness where it's intensified. I suppose compared to the standard, the sweetness on this is more round and softened, whereas on the standard 10-year-old, it's a little bit sharper because it's more of that honey sort of note. That's got a really nice palate. So you can really taste things like raisins and like it's fruit sweetness that comes across here, whereas the previous one was honeyed sweetness. You're very much getting that fruit sort of sweetness, the sort of things that comes from plums and raisins. It leans more towards the cooking side of things. I would say you're getting poached pear sort of sweetness, almost like a Christmas pudding in a glass. There's even fig in there. It's just beautiful. I really like that. I'm happy I did this. But if I go back to the 10-year-old now, see, as much as I like this one, after having the Travel Exclusive, the standard 10-year-old just tastes a little bit less sophisticated, which is really interesting considering they both spent the same amount of time in barrels. But because of all the exposure to Oloroso sherry cask, this is just much more rounded. It's better, it's just finished. So we have to admit they are different. Now, as much as I love the standard 10-year-old, that little bit of chocolate is just amazing, but the sweetness is a little bit sharp. It does hit you at the back of the throat. And this is a subtle whiskey. So I do find if I drink something else and then come back to this, it's hard to pick up as much flavor notes. Whereas the Travel Exclusive, it's a little bit more well-rounded. That sweetness is softer, so it goes down easier. It doesn't... I already knew what I was talking about. I just wanted another sip. It doesn't hit the back of your throat in quite the same way. It's just more rounded. It's a sherry bomb. If you're somebody who likes sherry bombs, this is definitely what you would prefer. So the standard Bushmills 10-year-old goes for $70 a bottle, and I still maintain that that's good value. That's why it was in my bang for buck range. It's a good whiskey, and it's just nice to always have on the shelf. The Travel Exclusive, being a Travel Exclusive, is meant to only be available in duty-free stores at airports. However, there are a few online whiskey retailers in Australia where you can pick this up. It usually goes for about $120 a bottle, but at the time of filming this, it's actually available at Nick's for $99, which per mil is pretty much the same price as this. You're looking at $10 per 100 mil. So it just comes down to what you prefer.
Do you recommend the Travel Exclusive?
I 100% recommend the Travel Exclusive. If you had the option of buying both at the same time and we're only going to get one, I love this, but look, this is just, it's more well-rounded. It just is. It's the same age, but it just tastes more mature. Go for this one. Have this one on your shelf, but go for this one. Buy both. It doesn't hurt to have both of these on your shelf. More whiskey. I'm an advocate for more whiskey. So that's the last of the Irish whiskies I'm doing for March, the St. Patrick's Day month, because one day for St. Patrick's Day just isn't enough. I've done Limavady with their single cask bottlings. I've done Kinahan's 10-year-old from their heritage selection. And now I've done Bushmills. Now, I'm not going to wait till next March before I do any more Irish whiskies. They'll pop up from time to time here. But some of the things that I've got coming up include a tour of the Manly Spirits Co. distillery, which is where they make Coastal Stone whiskey. That was a lot of fun. I actually got to pull a glass of whiskey directly out of the barrel. And I'll also be doing a review of the Kate Byron Chardonnay cask, which I picked up when I was actually doing a tour there a few weeks ago. So if you want to see some of those videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really does help me out. But enjoy what's in your glasses and slange.
Don't down. Take your top off. Where'd you get your shirt from?
Dramwears. Oh yeah.
I know where you got your shirt from. Class.
From Ben. We talked about this.
Okay.
More whiskey. I'm an advocate for more whiskey.
Moderation.
But moderation. Don't drink it all at once.
Don't drink it all at once.